You are in for a treat tonight. I had the pleasure of spending an hour this morning on the radio with our guest, and I didn't have to say very much. I did a lot of listening and a lot of learning, I might tell you. Before we get to that, though, I would like to introduce you to a very special individual to Saginaw Valley State University. He's a fair golfer, but from all accounts, he's a pretty darn good president. Please welcome President Don Vachon.
Thank you, Art, and I'll take that fair golfer as a very generous compliment. Good evening to all of you and welcome to Saginaw Valley State University. Tonight we gather for the 8th annual Dr. Raana Akbar Memorial Lecture Series. This enlightening event has covered many topics over the years, particularly on Islamic faith, culture, and history. I have no doubt that tonight's lecture on the teachings of Rumi will be compelling and a fitting tribute to the legacy of Dr. Raana Akbar. Some of you might already know that Raana was an outstanding member of our Board of Control and was an ardent supporter of our institution for many, many years. In addition to her distinguished medical career in Saginaw, Raana was a devoted wife and mother, community leader, and a dedicated advocate for inclusivity, especially in respect to her interfaith relations. She worked tirelessly to promote understanding of the Muslim faith and created an Islamic Center in Saginaw. We are grateful for Raana's legacy, and we say thank you through this annual lecture established by Dr. Wahid Akbar in memory of his wife and their children, Amna, Zainab, and Ahmed. Dr. Akbar and his family have been outstanding proponents of intercultural understanding. And I thank Dr. Akbar for his continued dedication to inclusivity in the Great Lakes Bay region. Dr. Akbar, we are proud to honor Raana this evening. I would now like to invite one of our distinguished guests this evening, Congressman Dan Kildee, Michigan's 5th District, to the podium to say a few words.
Thank you so much for that introduction and for the chance to just say a couple of things. First of all, I don't know how to quite express how great it is to be in the presence of a darn good president. It's good to be home, and this place feels like home. Saginaw Valley State University has been such a welcoming place to me in the time that I've been in Congress, and especially to finally be able to schedule to be president at one of these lectures. I'm really grateful. I'm particularly grateful to Dr. Akbar, who in honoring his late wife with this series continues what she clearly stood for, and that is to increase understanding. We are living in a really challenged time. There's no question about that. And I take it as part of my personal responsibility to do what I can in representing this diverse nation and this, I think, welcoming nation to the rest of the world. I take it as a responsibility to travel to other parts of the world, particularly in the Muslim world, to bring a perspective of inclusivity, of an understanding that I really think does represent the United States. And so it's important that we inform our understanding with knowledge, and that's what tonight is really all about. I had, with a few others, the pleasure of having some words and listening briefly to Dr. Safi a few minutes ago. And we're in for a very special evening. This is a really important perspective that this gentleman brings. And what he will do for us, those of us whose predisposition is one of understanding, is to inform that understanding with knowledge, with a better understanding of our own history as we learn it through a 13th century individual poet. This is really an important evening. It's not just important for this moment. It's important because it comes at a really critical moment for us as a country. And so to Saginaw Valley State University, to Dr. Akbar, to everyone involved in this, and particularly to Dr. Safi, thank you for including me in this, and I very much look forward to listening and learning tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congressman. I have a distinct pleasure now to introduce someone who opened my eyes to another world. I'm a Jewish kid from the Bronx, literally, born and raised in the Bronx. Did not grow up amongst Muslims, knew very little, if anything, about Islam, and lived most of my life that way. And I came to Saginaw many, many, many years ago, and over Wahid, Akbar, and some of his fellow Muslims, Dr. Sharosa Anwar, and began to understand the people, their culture, their humanity, and he really broadened my perspective on life. And that happens when you meet people from other cultures, other ethnicities, other races. We're all on this planet together. We all share the same goals, fears, dreams, nightmares. And it was a real eye-opening experience for me. And I am pleased to stand here today and say that I count him as a friend. He is a visionary to have this lecture series in honor of his late wife. And it is my privilege to introduce you to Dr. Wahid Akbar.
And Congressman Ph.D., thank you for your kind words and introduction. A very warm welcome to all of you here. Beautiful to see such a crowd, such a beautiful day out there, and you are here, so I really appreciate your being here for this event. Some of you have been to this event before, and some of you are new, and really appreciate all of you being here and spending this afternoon. As you have heard, you really are going to enjoy Safi, Omid Safi, who is a friend. I call him Omid Jan, which means dear Omid, because of the type of love, and you will hear about him, why he really means what he says. I think this event could not have been possible without the support of the Edwards Lecture Series and the Dahl Lecture Series. Dr. Peter Barry and Dr. David Nichols were very instrumental in bringing Professor Safi to Saginaw, and I was part of their team. So this couldn't have been successful if this team wasn't together. In the Saginaw Valley State University, Dr. Bishan and his leadership, including Andy Bethune, had not been as helpful in each and every way to attend this event. Event like this is difficult to put in, but the team is what makes a difference. That is what we see this evening. This is the 8th year, as you have heard, for this lecture series, which was started in Raana's name. Me and Raana always felt that if we are going to bring something to our community for people to understand what a religion is all about, the peaceful nature, being nice to your neighbor, being kind and gentle, and being part of the community, the best way to do that is to talk to our friends our neighbors, our co-workers. It doesn't help to be by yourself. And that is the reason, if you see the diversity of the attendance here, I'm really very happy to see all of you. One person I must thank, who is Jennifer Liu. She, for whatever reason, God bless her, took this event over since I started. And when you see the success in the well organization, she has been working on it for day one. And Jen, thank you very much. I know you're here somewhere in the crowd. Thank you. I recently came across a quotation, which I think it is from somebody, which wasn't said who it was from, but I would like to repeat that, which I think is partly the reason all of us are here. And that is, and I quote, "Learning till the last breath is a life well lived." And I think that is why we are here, to learn and be able to improve our life. Dr. Safi's presence here is truly a dream come true. I have been thinking of this a while ago, and about 6 months ago, I got a call from Professor Nichols, who is a friend. He does a lot of interfaith work. That he called this professor in North Carolina to invite him. And he says, "You're from Saginaw. Oh, so you must know Wahid." Because we were very lucky, me, Paul Chafee, who's here, Margaret Clark, and Nancy O'Hare. I think I have the right name correct. We went to Turkey on a tour with Dr. Safi. And though it was one of the most momentous kind of an event, or I should say 2 weeks that we had, and we still have a lot of fond memories. Dr. Safi is going to talk about the great Sufi mystic Rumi, who lived about 750 years ago. He's a best-selling poet in English language. And I'm not going to say too much about Rumi because I think Dr. Safi will cover it. Dr. Omid Safi is a leading Muslim public intellectual and is the director of the Duke Islamic Studies Center. Dr. Safi is a professor of Islamic Studies who specializes in contemporary Islamic thought and Islamic spirituality. He has served on the board of Pluralism Project at the Harvard University and is a co-chair of the steering committee for the study of Islam and Islamic mysticism group at the American Academy of Religion. He is committed to the intersection of love and justice. He was recently invited by the Martin Luther King family to speak in Atlanta. Appearing frequently in New York Times, Newsweek, Washington Post, PBS, NPR, and yes, the list goes on. And without further ado, I think you're here to listen to Dr. Safi, so I'd like to invite my friend Omid up on the podium. People know that I like to hug, so I'm going to invite him to hug.
You know, some folks have to wait till their funeral to have folks say nice things about them. And I am just one of those lucky people that get to experience it here and now, which is a treat. It is a joy to be in Saginaw. It is a joy to be with you at your beautiful university. And it's a joy to be in a place where the first time that you get here, you know that you're in a community. I had a chance to spend 7 years of my life in a village, not a town, a village called Hamilton, New York, where 2 of my babies were born, where the population sign is changed whenever a baby is born, or somebody leaves us. And being here, even though the population is much bigger, we're sitting this morning at a coffee shop, and people are coming in and they're hugging each other, and it's like, oh, this is the person that we know from here or from there, right? you live in a place that has a sense of community. And there's safety in community. And community doesn't happen by itself. Community doesn't descend down from heaven. Community is something that we have to shape here and now. And one of the things that I try to do in my life is to hang on to people like Wahid. Where'd you go? Hello. Yes. These are the community makers. These are the salt in the cooking, that without it, the food just doesn't taste right. And without a Wahid, a community doesn't happen. So thank you, my friend, for your friendship. Thank you for the work. I have this habit whenever I'm asked to go somewhere and share some words to start with a plea, a request, a prayer, how it is that you wish to receive it, which is that the time that we get to spend together be something that brings us together, that the time makes us aware of all the beautiful ways in which we're already interconnected, and we leave this gathering kinder and gentler. And that is not just the words of some nice southern boy, nor is it my Persian manners that my mama raised me with. It's a spiritual commitment. It's an ethical commitment. Right? The moments of our life are numbered. The number of breaths that we get to take in this lifetime are measured. So whenever it is that people choose to spend an hour of that time together, it should have a purpose. It should move us and inspire us to spending it, and may this be in the direction of kindness. So we're going to begin with, right away, with the point that Wahid has asked me 3 times. Make sure we don't forget to talk about. And when someone like Wahid asks me things 1 time, you say yes. And when he asks you twice, you're like, yes, sir. And when he asks you 3 times, you're like, Mama didn't raise no fool. We're gonna lead with this, which was, Omid, make sure you tell them, what do these teachings have to say to our lives today? Right? When you spend any amount of time reading this love poetry, here's one of the kinds of statements that you hear again and again and again. The teaching says, and I repeat it for you, have your heart be where your feet are. Have your heart be where your feet are. At first level, it sounds like such a simple statement. What do you mean? My heart's right here, the rest of me is right here, my liver is here, my feet and all the unmentionable parts are all right here. And then I think about the fact that I'm a teacher. I spend most of my life teaching 18 to 22-year-olds. And when I speak with them about, so, what are you here for? And they always say, well, I'm studying this. I'm majoring in. And after I graduate, I want to go to this kind of a school, that kind of a school, look for this kind of a job, that kind of a job, meet Mr. Right, Mrs. Right, Mr. Right number 1, Mrs. Right number 1, number 2, number 3, however likely. The key is to find the right one. If it takes you 17, go to, you don't want to spend your life with the wrong one. Buy the first house, maybe move up to a nicer house, have kid number 1, mess that one up, make kid number 2. And I listen really carefully, and I keep up with my students, and I catch them 5 years after I first taught them. They have their first job. How's it going? Oh, it sucks. It's not really kind of what I want to do for the rest of my life, but I gotta start somewhere. So I'm looking for the better job. Catch them 10 years and 15 years. How's it going? It sucks less. It's getting better. And we spend so much of our life in this type of an anticipation. We are in school not because we've been told that this is an extraordinary opportunity to reflect on what it means to be human. But because we're here, because time and again we're told, we'll give you the tools so you can get the job, so you can become, here's the magic great word of our century, successful. Success. Right? If before people wanted to be saved, now we want to be successful. And successful is never in the now. It's always in some distant, far-off horizon. You're trying to find that right relationship instead of being in good relations right now with the folks who are around you. You're trying to drive the kind of car, live in the kind of zip code, have the square footage of the house. And when I talk to many of our students, and it doesn't matter, I've taught in community colleges, and I've taught in the most elite schools in America. And I ask my students, what are you learning? What are you reflecting on, right? I mean, some of us were trained, not just in Rumi and the Quran and Hafiz, but also in Socrates and Plato and Aristotle. We were told, the unexamined life is not worth living. What do I hear from my students? I'm pre-med, and pre-law, and pre-business. How do we change this? How do we live a life where you're not pre-life? How do we live where your heart is, where your feet are? How do I persuade an 18-year-old that, honey, this is as good as some parts of life get? Right? How do I tell them that gravity is going to start working? Pulling things that you don't want to be pulled in directions that you do not wish for them to be pulled. Right? The battle of the bulge, which is what I've been fighting for the last 20 years. Have your heart be where your feet are. To live in this moment. What gives meaning to my life now? Who is in my circle? One thing that teachers like Rumi always ask us to do, they remind us of every person asked 2 questions. How deep is your love, and whom do you serve? How deep is your love, and whom do you serve? And ask yourself, how wide is your circle of compassion? If your 3 favorite people in this world are me, myself, and I, congratulations, you've risen to the level of self-love. And you gotta love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, you can't love the neighbor. A person who hates their own being is probably gonna hate everybody else also. So you have to love yourself. But if the circle of your compassion goes only as far as the firm of me, myself, and I, then you're a narcissist. So we push and we expand that circle. We make it a little wider. And you say, I do love me, some people, but the folks that I love are the ones who live under my roof. Excuse me, in the South we call it roof. I guess up here we call it roof. I'm multilingual. I speak English and Southern at the same time. You know? People who live under my roof. Good. You've risen above nepotism. You've learned to love somebody else. You've learned to project the I into the thou. But if the circle of your compassion ends with your family, are we allowed have political commentary here? It might make you president of a country. We allowed 2 political commentary here? When you try to pick up porn stars, you tell them that they remind you of their daughter. Ew! Okay, that's it, we're done. Back on love. But ew! You go. If the circle of your compassion and love extends on into your family, then you've risen above narcissism, but you're stuck at nepotism. You gotta keep pushing, keep expanding, let that love overflow. And for many people, it's, well, I love people in my community, and I can tell you all love your community. It's a beautiful thing to see. And there are many people in this country, large cities and small towns, who don't have a sense of community. But if it stays stuck there, we only love folks who are here now, already, then we're stuck in provincialism. Let it overflow. We love everybody who happens to live inside this imaginary line called the nation state. And nobody outside. We're going to make a big, beautiful ball. Make them pay for it. Okay, well then you're a fervent nationalist. Good, you're expanding the circle. But don't stop. And if you say, well, I'm a Christian man, and I love me some Christians wherever in the world there happen to be, even outside the boundaries of the nation state. Excellent. You're a religious bigot. Congratulations. The same thing for if you only love Muslims or Jews or Hindus or Buddhists or atheists or whatever. We got to keep expanding this circle until it encompasses the whole of humanity, and we're willing to say absolutely no exceptions. When the sun shines, it shines on a rock, it shines on a tree, it shines on grass, it shines on an ocean, it shines on trash. There is a love like this. There's a love that loves without boundaries and borders. And imagine how lovely it would be to untrain our ears, to untrain our heart. We're used to having, it's nice, it's refreshing to actually have someone who works for us in the government and have a speech that doesn't make you cringe. And you actually can nod along and smile and say, yes, I agree with everything they said. This was so refreshing. It's not my experience these days. And when you hear the politicians usually end their speech by saying, may God bless the United States of America. I keep waiting. I'm like, and? Have you ever heard an American politician say, may God bless Saginaw, may God bless the state of Michigan, may God bless these United States of America, and may God bless the whole of humanity, absolutely no exceptions. And why don't we? Why don't we actually expect that? That let this love be an overflowing love. That overflowing love is what people like Rumi have spent their whole life talking about. If there's one thing that I'm going to ask that we learn from this talk, is that love for people like Rumi is not an emotion. Love is not hearts and Valentine's Day. And this one will either really inspire you or disappoint you, but if you love the people, you tell them the truth. Love is much wider than just romantic love. Romantic love is like one flavor. And if you find that in love in this life, and if that person loves you back, and if your body parts fit together nicely and your hearts fit together nicely, good on you. Good on you. What about those of us who never find that romantic love? What about those of us who find that romantic love and it's with somebody that society has told you you're not allowed to love? What if it's with somebody whose body parts don't fit yours? Somebody that society's told you is the wrong color for you, the wrong religion for you, the wrong documentation. What if you have that kind of love and you lose them? I have memories of having been in Turkey with Wahid and going through Rumi's teachings and Rumi's poetry and seeing those tears in his eyes, talking about his beautiful wife, Raana. There's a love for a friend. There's a love for a neighbor. There's a love for a parent. There's a love for a child. And if you know your Bible and your Quran, there's a love for a stranger. For all the people who seem to only quote 3 lines of the Bible, those are the only 3 lines that they have ever heard, ambiguous lines, I can quote you 36 lines that talk about love the stranger, for you yourself once were strangers. What about that line? And shutting the door to the stranger, or let's translate the word stranger into 21st century English, the refugee, the immigrant. Shutting the door on their faces, not so loving. So love. Love if it's a friend, a child, a parent, a sibling, a romantic partner, trees. Love a puppy. My daughter, who's 17 years old, has a cat. I don't think I've ever viewed a love this pure in my life. I'm not jealous. It might look like I'm jealous. I'm not jealous. I am confident in the fact that my baby loves me, but she loves that cat. Yeah. You know so. Sometimes when she's at her mom's house, she FaceTimes me to have me hold the cat up in front of the iPhone so she can see her cat. Right? She loves the cat. That's love. What does love do? Love is when you project yourself beyond yourself. That's the first path, the first step towards being one with God. If you are sitting here tonight, if you are taking a breath, you are alive because somebody loved on you. Somebody sacrificed for you. If you're a parent and you've raised a child, you know what that's like. I have gotten up in the middle of the night more times than I can count because my baby girl, the one who loves the cat more than me, I know she loves it more than me. That's okay. I'm secure in my manhood, in my fatherhood. She was crying because she had a poopy diaper. And I had not slept for 8 hours for a long time. And then in the middle of the night, you have to make that instantaneous cosmic choice. Do I close my eyes? Do I close my ear and say, maybe somebody else will get up and change the diaper? Because I really need my sleep, because I'm important. I have to go teach, educate people, write books. I'm an important person. And important people need their beauty sleep. Or do you just leap out of bed because that's what love compels you to do? You don't make a pro-con list at that moment. There's not a benefits and loss analysis. Love compels you. Love forces you. You jump out of bed because you love your baby more than you love your own sleep. And I would love to say that that service is evenly distributed between fathers and mothers. It should be, but we know that it's not. In most societies today, it's moms who've done the bulk of that loving service. And I would go and I would pick up my baby girl, great love of my life. I would open up her diaper, and there, you thought some Muslims had biological and chemical weapons? We did. It's in my daughter's poopy diaper. That stuff could kill thousands of people by the sheer odor of it. I don't know what we were feeding that child, but she was taking it and changing it to WMD. And in that moment, you again make the decision, I love my baby more than I hate the smell of her poopy shitty diaper. If you love somebody, you serve somebody. Love is not an emotion. Love is what you bring into your interaction with people. The way I tell this to my young folk, my students, love is not an emoji. Love is not something you text people about. And I have to tell my own daughter and my students that the person who texts you the most is not necessarily the person who loves you the most. What Rumi does is that he takes these ideas and he says, love is not your emotion, and love is actually not even from you. Love is nothing short of the unleashing of God onto this realm. It says love is not even a quality of God. Love is God. It is the unleashing of God that erupts out of God. Love is what creates. Love is what brings you here. Love is what sustains you here. And think of it as this gushing, flowing river. If you can merge with it, it will carry you back home to where you came from. And we have to be willing to let go of this notion that the only person that I can love is that one really sexy person that I've chosen. Because love is actually all around you. You're not lacking for love, you're swimming in it. That's the metaphor Rumi uses. You are the fish in the ocean of love. But in order for you to know that you're in the ocean, somebody has to pluck you out of the ocean, and then you're like, oh, let me back in. And then you go back and you realize that neighbor, that friend, that parent, that child, that stranger, that they were sharing this love with. This morning, Art and I were sharing a conversation, and if you are committed to Rumi's teachings of love, it changes the way that you interact with your fellow human beings. One of the points that I always am struck by, and I think if you reflect on your own days, your interaction with your co-workers or your students or your teachers, I think about what happens when we ask each other, how's your day going? How are you doing? And some time ago, I don't know exactly when it was, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we stopped answering that question. What I get now from people is, how are you doing? This is what I get. Oh, I'm very busy. I'm so busy. I've got a lot to do. It doesn't matter if I'm asking a 16-year-old, a college kid, a 30-year-old, or a 50-year-old. How are you doing? Oh, I'm really busy. I've got a lot to do. I didn't ask you, how many items do you have on your to-do list? I didn't ask you, how long is your inbox of emails? Newsflash, Satan has retired. There's nothing more for Satan to do. He's like, folks are just going to answer email the rest of their life. They have no time left to think about God or love or to examine the unexamined life. Answering emails one at a time. Send back, reply. Devil's just sitting somewhere in Hawaii, chilling, drinking margaritas. Retirement is good for the devil. What would it look like if this task of love leads us to when we encounter each other and we say, instead of how are you doing, we actually ask the question that people from Islamic cultures have been asking each other for 1,000 years. حال شما چطوره؟ كيف حالك? We ask each other, how is your heart doing? How is the state of your heart in this breath, right now? Not what you have to do, not how busy are you. Why don't we have this conversation that says, your state of your heart changes, and I want to know, how's your heart doing right now? What if we actually make eye contact? Maybe touch each other gently on the arm and say, nothing. And wait for that person to give us a real answer. Actually, I find that my heart is quite heavy in this moment because of what's happening in our country, because of my mom's health, because of my child, because of this. Well, thank you for asking. How is your heart in this moment? It's a very intimate question. And what if we ask that question actually wanting to know the answer? Not asking it 50 times a day, hey random stranger, how's your heart doing right now? Right? Not a pickup line. Not a pickup line. We get to ask that question from people with whom we're in a relationship. And what if every day, instead of asking, how's it going? How you doing? 4 or 5 times, how's your heart doing? And waiting long enough to hear an answer. Right? That's the beginning of how we form community. Now, whether that community comes from the love teachings of 700 years ago or from the teachings of Saginaw, it is something well worth hanging on to. Let's look a little bit at some specific parts of Rumi's teachings. This is one of the oldest teachings, poems that people associate with Rumi, Baza, Harancha hasti baza, Gap kafir و gap robot parasti baza, این درگه ما درگه نومیدی نیست. 100 بار اگر تو بشکستی بازا. Here's a good translation. Come, come, whoever you are. Wanderer, worshipper, lover of leaving. It's an invitation to come. You don't have to be in the club already. Ours is not a caravan of despair, even if you've broken your vows 100 times. Come, come again. The invitation is specifically to the people who've fallen flat on their faces. This is another part where Rumi's lesson, I think, is a really great antidote for this obsession that we have with success. We talk about success as this linear thing. I'm old enough to be able to look back on some parts of my life, and it's got a lot of this. Crawl up and fall flat on your face. And then you get back up and you fall again. Right? And it's not just Rumi. We've got these incredible teachings. Some of you may know these. Ever tried? Ever failed? Tried again? Failed again. No matter, fail better. Fail better. But that actually feels true to a lot of the life that I know. What if we actually taught our students that in life, it's not just going to be this wonderful, smooth climb uphill. You're going to fall flat on your face. And you know what it means to be successful? Is if you learn to fall without breaking every bone in your body. If you learn to fall and catch yourself. If you crack a little more whole. And that's just as true in your love life as it's true academically. Like, I am a successful professor. I've been turned down for 25 professor jobs. I'm good. Dear Professor Safi, thank you very much for applying for this position. We were so overwhelmed by hundreds of qualified applicants that unfortunately, at this time, we are unable to grant your position. But it's not you, it's us. 25 places turned you down, for one of them was like, yes, you'll do. And I'm like, I'll sign on the dotted line before they know. You're stuck with me now, you can't take it back. Because it's legal, it's signed. It's the same way in our personal life. What if we talk about this? So here's Rumi's shrine that a few of us have had the chance to go. What a joy to have been there with Nancy and Margaret, Paul and Wahid. May it be that Turkey becomes a stable place again for folks to go. About 1 million people come here every year from every religious background you can imagine. Historically, there used to be these kind of shrines all over what you would think of as the Middle East and different parts of Europe, all of them devoted, Southeast Europe, devoted to the study of Rumi's teachings. And when you go in, there are beautiful calligraphic inscriptions that are put in mirroring shape. What is on the right mirrors what is on the left. What is above mirrors what's below. And that's to always remind you that your work in life is to serve as God's mirror. The art, the architecture, is a lesson, is a reminder of the reason that we've been put on this earth, is to reflect God's qualities. It is not enough to say, I have faith in a loving God. If your God is a loving God, shine that love towards people. I'm not concerned about the faith that you profess The measure of it is in how you treat humanity. That's what Rumi has been saying. That's what all of these prophetic traditions have been saying to us. People still come for pilgrimage, for visitation with their books of poetry. And this is one of the few times and places in Muslim societies where there has been an indigenous tradition of sacred movement, something that looks a little bit like yoga. It gets translated as dance, but it's a dance unlike perhaps what we're accustomed to. It's a slow, meditative, deliberate dance, which takes about 3 hours. Right? Imagine whirling around yourself for 3 hours. Right? Most of us would look like a drunk frat boy. Not that I've ever been, but I read books, and I went to college, so I know they can't walk straight. They fall 10 feet and fall flat on their faces. These guys whirled for 3 hours because they've learned to concentrate on the breath. They've learned to be centered when everything around you is whirling. What a skill that would be. Imagine for 1 second that you lived in a world, maybe a country, where things were out of whack. It's a mental exercise, I know. But just for a second, imagine a situation where people are acting in ways that seem to be not entirely commensurate with the expectations that we have of them. A bizarro world. And what would it be like if you actually had a kind of spiritual anchoring that said, the world around me may be out of whack, but I don't have to be. I can still remain centered, rooted, anchored, grounded. I can still remember who I'm supposed to be in this world where everything else seems to be whirling out of control. And like everything else, there's a profound symbolism in the movement. As the whirlers, as the folks in their prayer, in their meditation, in their dance are whirling, you see their right hand turning up towards heaven and their left hand turning down towards the earth. It's an image of dancing in rain. As we were talking about in cultures where rain is mercy. It's where you have emptied yourself of your ego and your entire being has become a conduit, a channel for God's grace. With one hand, you're receiving God's grace, it's flowing through you, and you're releasing it onto the rest of creation. Rumi puts this in extraordinarily practical ways. Yes, he talks to you about enlightenment and illumination, very fancy ideas, but he also asks you the most practical questions. Are your eyes illuminated? How do you look at one another? Do you look at each other the way that you would have God look at us? Or are you casting darts? Are you casting mean, angry glances, lustful glances? What about touch? We are having a long overdue conversation in this country about what's a good touch and what is an unwanted touch. What would it be like for us to say, we will only touch one another when it is wanted, when it is reciprocated, in a way that's comforting, never clutching, grabbing, possessing. what would it be like to transform ourselves organ by organ? This little powerful organ, powerful organ, which can be the sweetest of our faculties, or it can be biting. And it's not even what you say, it's how long you take to say it. Here's another mental exercise, and let's pretend that this hasn't been the story of my life. Person A says to person B, I love you. And the person B says, I also have always thought of you as a great friend. Or in today's language, you text somebody, I heart emoji you, and instead of getting a response back right away, you get the dreaded ... of death. And you're holding the phone saying, come on, say you love me too, say you've been waiting for these magical words for your whole life. It's not even what you say, it's how long you take to say it. What would it be like to transform ourselves, organ by organ, faculty by faculty? There are teachers today in these countries, men and women. Here's a female teacher, Jamal Noor, that we had the great fortune of meeting with. She teaches classes this size and more 3 times every week on the Quran and on Rumi's poetry, where men and women come to study with her. And for the last 700 years, when people have been studying Rumi's poetry, it looks like this. Beautiful, illuminated manuscripts where calligraphy, gold leaf, and painting come together to create these masterful works of art. You can find these everywhere, from India and Pakistan to Iran and Central Asia to what's today Turkey to Bosnia. This is the first page of Rumi's masterpiece, which by some measures, no other book has been copied as frequently after the Quran in Muslim history. And if you want to stereotype, we shouldn't stereotype, we shouldn't generalize, but if you want to generalize, you can say, after scripture, the Muslim imagination has been shaped by an erotic, spiritual, mystical book of love poetry. That would be a nice stereotype to have about Muslims. And if you measure it by the number of books that we produce, that's absolutely true. There's something that I love about this line that's useful for me. It's the first line of it, it's in Arabic. هذا كتاب المثنوي وهو أصول الدين. This is the book of the Masnavi, the rhyming couplets, and it is the root of the root of the root of religion. Or as we would say in the southern dialect, it's the root of the root of the root of religion. It's a tree metaphor. Think about a tree, and think about what's grounding the tree, what's anchoring the tree, the roots of the tree. And then think about, in your life, in my life, what is it that's anchoring us? What is it that's grounding you? For some of us, it's the love of our family. It's the love of a special person. For some of us, if we're being honest, it's our status. It's our good name. It's our money. It's our possession. or positions. What happens if those things come kind of shaky? What happens if your sense of, I am an important person because I have this job, and you're fired? I am worthy of dignity because such and such loves me, and such a person is no longer there. I'm such and such person because I am rich, bitch. And then you're no longer rich. What happens if the thing that gives you a sense of self-esteem and confidence is taken away? And he's telling you to ask yourself that question. What is the anchor to your anchor? What's the anchor to the anchor to your anchor? Go deeper in yourself. And ask yourself this question. Take a look at a long, beautiful, tall tree and ask yourself the question, what do the roots of that tree do for it? You don't have to be a botanist to know that answer. What do they do? It feeds it, right? And what happens if the roots are no longer gathering nutrients for the tree? What happens to the tree? It withers and it dies. And Rumi's telling you, it's possible to spiritually, religiously, be a withered tree. If you don't water the tree of your faith, you become a dry tree, a brittle tree. And we see this all around us. I don't care what religious community you're from. People who pray the right amount of time, who do the right rituals, but there's nothing moist about them. There's nothing tender about them. There's nothing sweet about them. Don't be that. Don't become a dry, brittle tree. Be a tree that's sustained so that you can give fruit. And then the other thing, and we see this in North Carolina all the time, we're probably one of the most heavily wooded parts of this great country. What other service do the roots of a tree provide the tree? They anchor you, because when the first good stiff wind comes, we call those hurricanes. We number them after the letters of the alphabet, because we get quite a few of them. When the good first stiff 80 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour comes, if your roots are not strong, a 100-foot tall tree can just get knocked over. And Rumi's telling you that in life, there's going to be storms. There might even be hurricanes. Let yourself be anchored. Here's how he was talking about Saginaw. I had the great fortune last month of going to California. That in and by itself is not a good fortune. When I went to California, I went to Muir Woods. Muir Woods, 30 minutes north of San Francisco, is a temple. It is holy ground. It's a holy ground that's not a church, a mosque, or a temple. It's a temple of God, where there's no pillars and there's no stone. It's all redwood trees. 1,000-year-old redwood trees, which can be 200 feet tall. And here's the most extraordinary thing that I learned. Their roots are 2 to 6 meters deep. 6 feet to 18 feet. The tree itself is hundreds of feet tall, but the roots are 6 to 18 feet. So how have they survived 1,000 years of hurricanes? They know the secret. that you all know. What the trees of redwood forests like Moyer Woods do is what you all do here. Those roots reach out to one another and they hang on for dear life. When the roots connect, even a hurricane can't knock down the trees because the other trees catch you when you're about to fall. If you're blessed to live in a place that has community, you might stumble, but the community is going to catch you. It doesn't have to be 300 people. Sometimes a community can be one. Sometimes it can be two. I call that folks who are in your boat. Sometimes life feels like you're on these waves, up and down. It might be choppy, but you know that somebody's in your boat. You don't even have to look back and make sure that they're there. You just reach back and they grab your hand. The folks who are in your boat, that's your community. Those are your people. They don't have to be related to you by blood. You don't need a certificate from the local government to recognize them being in your boat, but they're in your boat. And they simply say to you, you go up, I come up with you. You go down, I'm going down with you, but you will never be alone. That notion of having folks in your boat is what in religious language we call having a beloved community. Can't have the beloved community without some love. That's so much at the heart of these teachings. When I told you about these notions, I'm going to wrap up in about 5 minutes or so. As I said, I would talk for about an hour, and I'd like to be that rare preacher who actually sticks to his time limit. When you go to these caravanserais, these are the medieval hotels, or as we call them down south, hotels. You would come in, you would put down your burdens, and you get to stay for 3 days. You get to do trade. Oh, I love your silk. Would you like to have some of my spices? And Rumi, in a beautiful poem called The Guest House, tells you, look at your own heart as being a hotel. The medieval caravanserai, welcome your emotions like a guest. Think about how often people talk about, how you doing? They're like, I'm happy. I am happy. I am sad. I am miserable. And he's like, no. These are your guests. Our Buddhist friends have almost this identical teaching. It would be like to observe your heart and be able to say, look, here comes joy. Joy, you are one of my favorite guests. I love when you come to visit me. Come inside. Make yourself at home. I know you're going to stay for 3 days, whether that's 5 minutes or 3 months. And at some point you will leave, but make yourself at home. Could you look at yourself as this ancient self, as this eternal self, as the self created by God in the image of God, and see your emotions as the waves that come and go? could you be just as gracious when sadness comes? Instead of being like, I'm going to fight sadness, I'm going to resist you, I'm going to kick you out, I'm going to evict you. Could we actually be gracious and say, hello, sadness. You are such a faithful friend. When so many of the other guests have stopped coming, you keep coming back. I recognize you, and I know exactly where you like to go. Come on in, make yourself at home, and I know that you too will leave in 3 days. It's one thing for us to be generous with each other. It's one thing for us to be kind with one another. Talk about being generous with your own self. Talk about being kind with your own heart. That's how we become this real human being. Rumi has a wonderful story. He took it as we did. Nobody has an original idea in this world. All the good ideas have already been said. It's how you use it, how you recast it, how you play with it. So Rumi's living in the part of the world that's Greek. There's more Greek ruins in Turkey than there are in Greece. Mind blown. There's a great story of Diogenes, when a man's going around broad daylight with a lit torch. Weird story, strange story. And Rumi's like, I like this story, I'm going to take it, it's mine now. I'm going to, ready for a really bad joke? In 3, 2, 1, I'm going to ruminate on it for a few days. And he comes up with this poem, As divo dat malunam insanam asust. An old man is wandering around the marketplace, broad daylight, with a lit torch. They're like, what you doing? And he's like, I am looking for one real human being. And people are like, a real human being. None of those to be found here. And the man is like, I am sick and tired of these two-legged beasts and demons masquerading as a human. I'm either going to find me one, or I'm going to become one. That's the whole goal. That's the whole goal of this path of love, is to become a real human being, what we were meant to become. Let me end. We could have talked for 2 hours, but let's end with a story that I love from the last pages of his book. And it's the story of Imam Ali, Prophet Muhammad's cousin and son-in-law, the 4th Sunni Caliph, the first Shia Imam. It's a powerful, beautiful story with some historical truth that he rumifies it. He takes a great story and moves into the realm of poetry. So, Arabs were great warriors. And they knew, in the words of the greatest movie of all time, Princess Bride, how to kill each other like civilized people. Namely, we wouldn't just push a button and kill people. First, we would trash talk in poetry. I would send forth my greatest poet, and you would send forth your greatest poet. And we would mock each other's genealogy. Your tribe's so weak, you can only trace yourself back 7 generations. Oh, snap! And you would respond by saying, your genealogy is so weak, you call yourself the noble ones because you don't know who your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is. And we'll just go back and forth. And at some point, sometimes, and this actually happened, people would be like, damn, their poets are so good. Imagine how good their warriors must be. You all win today. We're going to go home. If the poetry thing doesn't work, why don't we all put down our weapons, we sit down, we send forth our best warrior, you send forth your best warriors, they try to kill each other like civilized people, and whoever side wins gets to have the day. We don't have to kill all of us. So Rumi tells the story, this part is all from the historical books, that the pagan side sent forth a man who's not named in the story, he's just called the Mountain Man. Because the dude is as big as a mountain. And he's like, Muslims, you have been promised paradise if you die as a martyr. I am here to expedite your way. Who is eager to meet his maker? And the prophet is like, yes, you are incredibly large. He turns to his companions and he's like, I promise you one of two things. You will either defeat him or you will get to meet your maker. And it's like the scene from Monty Python. The whole army takes a step back, except for Ali, this chivalrous warrior, who's like 16 years old at this time. And Ali's like, me, I'll fight him, O Messenger of God. And Muhammad's like, Ali, you're a kid, sit down. Do I have a man, a real man among my soldiers today? Silence. Everything happens in threes. The third time, Muhammad is like, Ali, it's been great knowing you. Go have a noble fight, perhaps a noble death. This part is all in history books. The rest of it is Rumi. Rumi talks about Ali and the mountain man engage in hand-to-hand combat. Ali at some point picks up the mountain man, throws him to the ground, takes out his sword, this is a sword, and he's about to finish him. At this point, the mountain man, who's just tasted defeat for the first time, is so disgusted at having lost to a kid that he spits on Ali's face. And Ali takes his sword, puts it back in its sheath, and begins walking around in circles. Now, because this is poetry and not history, what follows is 20 pages of mystical dialogue between these two. So we're not in the realm of fact here, we're in the realm of beauty. I said 5 minutes, I lied, I meant 8. It's like when God says it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days and 40 nights doesn't mean 39 and before 40. It just means a lot. That's why 40 happens so much. Jesus is 40 days and 40 nights. And the Israelites are lost for 40 years. Those don't mean 40. It just means gazillion. You should be thankful that when I said 5, I meant 8. So, Ali and the warrior engage in this battle, and the warrior's like, bro, you just beat me. You had me, you're on my chest, the sword was out, you could have just finished me, why didn't you? And Ali says, you know, you think you are this mountain man. But you see, my friend, I'm the real mountain here. Because being a mountain is not about size. When that guest came, when you spat on my face, I got really angry. Up to that point, everything that I had done was for his sake. If I had even killed you, it would have been for the sake of God. But when you spat on my face, I got really angry. And if I kill you now, I'll be doing it for my sake, not for God's sake. The worry man is like, wow, that's deep. How do I sign up for this Islam thing, you know? So he becomes Muslim, but this story doesn't end there. But this is where we are going to end. You seem like you're lacking in faith. Just because I've got more poetry that I could recite, which I haven't, and I may not. The warrior asks Ali, tell me the real truth. Why didn't you kill him? And Ali says, okay, the real reason is this. When I sat on your chest and I had my sword out and I looked at you and I looked into your eyes, I saw a reflection of myself. I saw in you a reflection of who I am. How can this Ali kill this Ali? If I kill, I have killed off a part of what makes me human. You and I are caught up together. We're bound, as Mother Morgan would say, we're bound in this inescapable network of mutuality. I cannot be who I want to be until you become everything that you want to be. The reason that we are going to end here is that this story, too, is part of what Wahid would have us take to heart for this moment, for us as a people, and as a nation, and as a human community. We find ourselves with people across the aisle, across ideological divide, and with people that before and without knowing them as full and complete human beings, we have labeled the enemy. If we eliminate them, because we are already wrapped up in one another as those trees are, if we eliminate them, we have eliminated a part of our own humanity. You and I, my friends, are in this together. Either we make it together, or we go down together. And that's why the last word for this evening is a beautiful line from Rumi's poetry, where he says, you and I have to live as if you and I never heard of a you and an I. You and I have to live as if you and I never heard of a you and an I. May you be blessed. May God bless your community. May God bless every person who makes this place a community. May God bless the memory of Raana Akbar, who continues to give fruit long after her physical presence has moved on to a more luminous realm. May God bless your community, your state, your nation, and the whole of humanity. Absolutely no exceptions. Thank you very much.